It's been a while. Welcome back to the channel. It's me, Adam. You're watching Steady Invest. And it's been a few months since I last posted a video, but now I'm back. I'm going to be posting regularly and consistently, and I'm going to be growing the channel with you guys together. Looking forward to that. Super excited. In this video today, just going to be talking about the stock market in general, the different sectors, crypto, Elon Musk, of course, and his tweets, and just getting back into it, guys, and options as well that I have been learning, and it's been crazy. So the last few months in the stock market have been nuts, depending on what kind of investor you are and what you've been invested in. If you're more risk on, looking at hyper growth stocks over the next 5 to 10 years, technology, more so the small and mid caps versus the large caps, which have been a little bit more stable, volatile nonetheless, but not as bad as innovation and ARK Invest and all that. So if you've been a little bit more risk off, if you look at the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones, or even HGRO, which is an ETF I'm a big fan of, they aren't very, they haven't been worse for wear over the last few months. Whereas if you look at ARK Invest, or off the top of my head, Tesla, Teladoc, DocuSign, a bunch of these names are just down 30, 40, 50, 60%. You don't even get me started about SPACs and that crazy rally that we had back in the end of 2020 and early 2021 up until about February or so, and GameStop and whatever and all that, and Dogecoin. And it's been crazy over the last few months, so we're going to get into that. I have a bunch of charts I'm going to show you, and we're going to get back into it, guys. Let's get into it. All right, starting off with the S&P 500 on Friday, May 14th. It was actually a pretty strong day. The SPY was up 1.5%. Most of the sectors were up except for maybe healthcare, which is about sideways, and then Disney was down. That kind of sticks out like a sore thumb. They had their earnings on Thursday after hours, and we see the aftermath of that the next trading day. However, if we zoom out 1 week, we do see that a lot more red, and that's because Monday through Thursday was pretty ugly, Friday being the exception. And if we zoom out a little bit more to 3 months, to that mid-February mark, we see that technology is pretty down, minus Google and Facebook. They both get the revenue from advertisements, so that was a lot stronger. Then we have YouTube, of course, for Google. But looking at Tesla, down 30%, Amazon and Microsoft trading sideways, and Apple down 6%. You have the banks doing really well, up at least 15%, 26%, 20% for Berkshire, even though that's not a bank. But we see a big rotation from these growth names to these value names, to banks, industrials, energy, which were really decimated last year during the pandemic as well. And if we look at the S&P 500 and we remember the peak uncertainty that we had before the election back in November, we actually got vaccine news back here, but we also were very uncertain about what if Trump doesn't come out of the office, out of the White House without dragging him out of there. And there was so much fear back then, and people were like, you know what, we're going to invest after everything's, more certain. But that's the best time to invest, is when fear and uncertainty are at their peak. And once we had vaccine news and we knew that Biden was going to win and that Trump wasn't going to put up such a fight, we saw that the market was a lot stronger afterward. And if we look at the volatility index, which shows us also fear, so when things become more volatile, things are also much more fearful, right? So I call this the fear index as well. So you can actually see here the beginning of the pandemic and see how high it was. It was up to about 85 or so. And then when we were at the election time, it was over here, and it peaked at about 40. And then this is where we are right now. So you see that the best times to invest are when things are at peak fear. Remember the stock market back in mid to late March last year was the best time to invest. So peak fear also means like peak cheap prices, I guess, is another way you can look at it as well. And then last June we had volatility, and then September we had that correction, as well as October, and then it was white hot after that, and then we had February time, and then we had GameStop over here. And then over the last few months, again, it's been very choppy, very volatile at times. So with the S&P 500, we see it here trudging along, and then we had, again, GameStop era, and then it's been pretty much flirting with those all-time highs. We had a little correction here, all-time high, correction, all-time high, correction, and then, so right now we're going to continue making all-time highs, or we're going to come maybe back down to this area, to the 400 area, or maybe 380. We'll have to see. In the Dow Jones, in the same time frame, mini correction, all-time high, mini not even correction, all-time high, pullback, all-time high, sideways, all-time high, pullback, and then probably all-time high, but we'll have to see. Taking a look at QQQ, a little bit more different. To see, all-time highs up until mid-February. Big pullback, correction, maybe 10% or so. Bounces back up, sideways, and then all-time highs again. And then now we're kind of in between the pullback and the all-time high. And we know with QQQ, they're the biggest technology companies in the States. So although we see volatility, it is nothing like innovative technology, where we see over here a lot more downward movement. So we had an all-time high over here, big pullback, bounce, pull back to the same area, bounce, sideways action, and then pull back, but making new lows. So right now we're getting prices from back in November. So if you bought any time after November, you're either break even or negative pretty much. So it's been a lot more painful for some people than others. If we look at, for instance, off the top of my head, Pinterest, a lot of downward movement. If we look at DocuSign, same idea. Palantir, which is a little bit different than them. Yep. If you look at, let's look at SPACs. Let's look at Black Sky. Let's look at APXT. Let's look at PaySafe. Let's look at, I don't know, off the top of my head, let's look at CCIV. Let's look at Skills. It's been a bloodbath for some of these high flying names. Remember, look at this one used to be what, 48, 45, and now it's 15. It bottomed out at 1240. So it's been crazy. And remember, Bitcoin, we saw a huge run up again at the end of last year and then into 2021. And then it's been a lot of sideways action ever since maybe mid-February, where we reached all-time highs later on at 65,000, and then we've kind of traded in between there and 43,000, 45,000. And are we going to break up over the 65,000 up to 70, 80, 90, 100,000, or are we going to see levels of 40,000, 32,000, 30,000? Who knows? Bitcoin is very volatile, but again, I'm bullish long term. And Ethereum has been on a tear all 2021. I remember, I think it was in December, where it was a big deal that it reached $800 again, and it hadn't been at that price for 3 years. And since then, it has quadrupled since then, 5 times as much, and went to 4,000. So it's been a crazy, crazy ride for Ethereum, especially over the last 3 weeks or so, where it's gone from 2,200 to 4,000, 3,700. So it's been a crazy ride for Ethereum. And another thing as well is you see the market caps of some of these cryptocurrencies. At Bitcoin is under $1 trillion now. It was at $1 trillion when it was trading at 60,000 US dollars, and Ethereum at almost $500 billion. Binance at $87 billion, $72 billion for Cardano. Dogecoin, it's just, there's so much money in crypto right now that it has taken thunder away from the stock market. At least that's my belief. And a lot of that money a lot of the hype has gone there. So the stock market doesn't have that momentum right now. But money will eventually look at that technology, those technology prices, and say, hey, that's pretty cheap in relation to where these cyclical Dow Jones stocks are now trading, right? So they're going to want to balance. I don't know if that's going to be next month, in half a year, or whenever it's going to happen, but that's my opinion on the stocks that I'm investing in. And eventually crypto will lose some of that thunder. Even though I think crypto has an amazing future ahead of it, it will lose some of its hype, and I think it will come back into stocks. I just don't know when big money wants to do that, because big money ultimately drives the stock market. As well, I also want to mention gold and silver. I've been paying a lot more attention to these precious metals over the past few months, and they're very, very interesting. Now, I didn't give them that much attention back last year, and I looked into it a little bit, but I have really taken an interest into these commodities, especially precious metals. And take a look at gold, for instance. We see the double bottom back in March and in April, and that was the rate just under 1,700, and right now it could be making a comeback into 2021. And we do see resistances at this 1850 level and 1880, but the gold is very promising, especially with inflation. It's something I want to keep an eye out for the rest of the year, the second half of the year at least. And with silver as well, the silver squeeze. Silver is a much cheaper metal than gold, obviously, and it is so interesting to see just what's going on in the world right now, and physical silver, and people are stacking it, and the supplies and what you're hearing out there. So again, very interesting. I'll make more dedicated videos on gold and silver later on, but something I will be keeping an eye out on the second half of 2021. So what have I been doing over the last few months other than lose a decent chunk of market value due to the volatility is I have been doubling down on my high conviction names and just reconstructing my portfolio that I can look at it and I can say this is why I have this stock as my number one stock and why this is number two and why I have this one in shares versus a leap, and just really going over my portfolio and trimming the fat, making sure that I'm concentrated in the names that I want to, and really trying to buy these things while they're cheap, because I want to look back at 2021 and give myself a pat on the back. Good job 2021 Adam for buying these stocks when everyone was like it's going to drop another 20% and you're not at the bottom yet, and people are laughing at you and saying whatever, that in a few years those same people will say you got so lucky that you bought things when they were so cheap. It's like, no, I had to go through the thick of it and just, oh my goodness, to the fear and the volatility. It's not easy you're taking on risk, and it's so easy to say, oh, you just doubled your money, but I also had to risk my money in order to double it to get to that point. So just stick to your guns, stick to your strategy, stick to your plan. We're going to talk more in the next video about I don't know what yet. I'm excited. I'm happy to be back. And yeah, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe. Welcome to the channel, guys. We're going to make it new and better than ever, and it's going to be awesome. See you guys in the next one.